She steps into the quiet wine cellar after receiving an urgent message from her husband. He said he needed her signature on some insurance papers, something that should have taken only a few minutes. But the moment she walks in, the air shifts instantly. His mistress lunges forward, using her full strength to shove the pregnant wife into a marble counter, sending glass shattering and red wine spilling across her belly like a slap to her dignity. The entire room freezes. No one steps up, no one offers a hand. And then, from the far end of the hallway, a man in a black jacket appears, his eyes sweeping over the broken glass, the spilled wine, and the brutal truth staring back at everyone. What follows is a clash of deceit, power, and cold, unforgiving justice that none of them are prepared for. Before we begin, tell us what time you're watching and where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The sun hung low over Napa Valley, spreading a soft golden glow across the rolling vineyards that stretched for miles beyond Thornhill Vineyards Tasting Hall. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with a warm, elegant energy. Guests swirled wine in crystal glasses, laughed beside polished oak counters, and admired the walls lined with vintage bottles aged longer than most marriages. The air carried a gentle mix of blackberry scent, oak barrels, and California evening breeze drifting through the open patio doors. Every detail felt cinematic, calm, and carefully curated. Ava Lancaster paused before stepping fully into the tasting hall. At 6 months pregnant, she had learned to move with caution. Her hand rested instinctively on her belly, feeling the faint flutter of the baby's movements beneath the soft blue fabric of her maternity dress. She had come here because Ethan, her husband, had sent her a message that sounded urgent. He said he needed her signature on the insurance papers for their home renovation. She hoped this meant he wanted to fix things between them, or at least speak calmly after weeks of cold distance. When she entered, several guests looked up, offering polite smiles. Some nodded in greeting, their expressions softening at the sight of her pregnancy. Others stepped aside kindly to give her space. She appreciated the small courtesies. They reminded her of the kindness she believed still existed in the world, even if her marriage had grown too quiet and strangely unfamiliar. She scanned the room for Ethan. He was not near the bar or the balcony. He was nowhere she could see. Her breath tightened slightly. That was when Harper Vale noticed her. Harper stepped forward from a circle of well-dressed guests, her red dress clinging to her figure like something pulled from a magazine shoot. Her heels clicked gracefully against the wood floor as she approached, her eyes bright with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Her lips curved into a smile that looked friendly at first glance, but Ava instantly felt the sting beneath it. "Ava," Harper said, as though greeting an old friend. "You made it." Ava managed a small nod. "I'm looking for Ethan. He told me to meet him here." Harper's smile grew sharper. "Oh, Ethan is around, but we should talk first." Ava hesitated. Harper had been appearing far too often in Ethan's business matters. A new consultant, a new collaborator, always around, always smiling at him in ways that felt wrong to Ava's instincts. She had brushed off those feelings again and again, refusing to believe her marriage had fallen into something so ugly. "Harper," Ava said gently, "I don't think now is a good time. I really need to find my husband." Harper stepped closer. Too close. The scent of expensive perfume pushed into the space between them. "You'll see him soon enough," Harper murmured. "But before that, there's something you need to understand." A prickle of unease rose across Ava's skin. Guests nearby continued their conversations, unaware that tension was rising in the center of the room. A server carrying a tray of wine paused briefly, watching the exchange with curiosity, but then moved away as if afraid of intruding. Ava kept her voice steady. "I don't want trouble. I'm just here to talk to Ethan." Harper laughed under her breath, a low, amused sound. Then she moved abruptly. Her hands struck Ava's shoulders with startling force. The shove came before Ava could brace herself. She stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat as her heels scraped against the polished wooden floor. Her hip collided hard with the edge of the tasting counter, sending a sharp burst of pain through her side. A cluster of wine glasses fell from the counter, crashing against the floor. Red wine exploded outward like dark paint splattering across her dress, soaking into the pale blue fabric. Gasps filled the room. Guests froze mid-conversation. A few hands flew to mouths. Someone whispered, "She's pregnant." Another voice muttered something about calling security, but no one moved quickly. People stared as if stunned, caught between shock and the fear of involving themselves in someone else's conflict. Ava clung to the counter with trembling hands. Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs. Her breath came fast and shallow. She instinctively placed her other hand over her belly, terrified of what the impact might have done to her child. She felt a faint flutter beneath her palm, and fear cut through her like ice. She lifted her eyes to Harper. "Why would you do that?" she whispered, her voice small, raw. Harper crossed her arms. Her smile turned cruel. "Because you have been living in a fantasy. Ethan doesn't want you anymore. He hasn't for a long time. Showing up here, like this, only proves how out of place you are." Tears burned the corners of Ava's eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry for Harper. She would not give her that satisfaction. "You pushed me," Ava said, barely able to process the reality. "Yes," Harper replied lightly. "And honestly, I'm surprised you're still standing." A couple nearby stepped closer, then stopped again, uncertain. The awkward, stunned silence in the room felt heavier than the smell of spilled wine. Every pair of eyes watched, but no one crossed the invisible barrier between spectator and helper. Ava pushed herself upright, fighting the sharp ache in her side. Her legs trembled. Wine dripped from her dress. Glass crunched softly under her shoes. Harper tilted her head, as if examining a piece of artwork. "You really believed he still chose you? That is almost sweet." Something inside Ava broke at that moment, not in a way that shattered her spirit, but in a way that exposed the painful truth she had been avoiding for months. She had felt the distance growing between her and Ethan. She had sensed the coldness, the secrecy. But she had clung to hope because she believed in marriage, in vows, in loyalty. Now, facing Harper's malice, she understood how alone she had been. Her throat tightened, but she straightened her spine. "Please leave me alone," she said quietly. Harper lifted a brow. "Oh, sweetheart, this is only the beginning." The words landed like a fresh blow. Ava looked down at her stained dress, at the broken glass glittering around her feet, at the wine spreading across the floor in a dark pool. She felt a wave of humiliation and fear, the kind that presses into the lungs until breathing becomes a conscious effort. The world around her blurred slightly as she struggled to steady herself. The baby moved again, a soft flutter, a reminder she could not fall apart. Not here. Not now. Ava wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, lifted her chin, and took a slow breath. She did not know where Ethan was. She did not know what awaited her, but she knew she needed to walk away from Harper before the situation grew even uglier. The tasting hall had gone quiet, the soft jazz fading beneath the weight of what had just happened. People watched her with a mixture of pity and discomfort, unsure whether to speak or step aside. Ava tightened her grip on the counter one last time to steady herself. Then she began to move, each step slow and careful, her hand still pressed over her belly, carrying her pain and dignity through a room that had witnessed her worst moment. She headed toward the side hallway, where she could catch her breath away from 100 staring eyes. And as she walked, the tasting hall remained suspended in tense silence, unaware that this cruel moment at Thornhill Vineyard was only the beginning of a much darker unraveling that none of them could yet imagine. Ava kept her hand on the tasting counter for one final breath, steadying herself as her ribs ached and her pulse throbbed in her neck. She lifted her chin, swallowed the sting in her throat, and forced her shaking legs to move. One step, then another. Her hand remained pressed against her belly, guarding the tiny heartbeat inside her, as she guided herself toward the side hallway. Anything to escape the stares, the whispers, and the heavy silence that seemed to cling to her skin like smoke. The hallway felt cooler than the main tasting hall, lit by sharp white lights instead of the warm gold glowing over the vineyard. The air here was clearer, quieter, but her chest still tightened with each breath. She moved slowly, bracing her shoulder against the wall as her vision pulsed with pain. She could still hear the faint murmur of shocked guests behind her, their voices rising and fading in uneven waves. She needed space. She needed air. She needed to protect her baby. Ava reached the small service corridor that connected to a private side room used by staff for storage and short breaks. The door was half open, revealing a narrow room lined with shelves of linens, supply boxes, and a small metal chair in the corner. She slipped inside, closed the door behind her, and leaned her back against it. Only then did she let herself shake. Her breath trembled, her eyes burned. The sting from Harper's shove radiated down her spine and into her lower belly. Panic pushed against her chest like a rising tide. She slid a hand over her side, trying to gauge whether she felt any unusual pain. The baby nudged her softly. The faint movement steadied her. She whispered, barely audible, "It's okay, little one. I'm here." A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, as if ashamed to even let the moment touch her. Outside the door, she heard footsteps, fast, purposeful, and she knew who they belonged to before the door even creaked open. Harper stepped inside without knocking. The red dress looked even bolder in the harsh white light of the room, and the contempt in her eyes sharpened in the confined space. She closed the door with her heel as if she owned the building. Ava straightened immediately, instinctively shielding her belly. Harper glanced around the room with mild disgust. They really should upgrade this space. It feels like something from a budget motel. She looked back at Ava. Then again, "It suits you." "No?" Ava swallowed hard. "Please, just leave me alone." "That would be too easy," Harper replied, folding her arms casually. "You embarrassed yourself out there. Now you want to run off and hide. That is not how this works." Ava's voice cracked. "I did nothing to you." Harper laughed softly, stepping forward. "You existed. That is enough." Her eyes traveled down to Ava's stomach, lingering with a coldness that made Ava's breath hitch. "It must be so exhausting, carrying a child for a man who does not want you." Ava's face tightened. She felt the words like daggers. "You don't know anything about my marriage." "Oh, sweetheart, I know more than you think." Harper moved closer, circling Ava like a predator, patiently choosing where to bite. "Ethan has been unhappy for a long time. I listened to him. I supported him. I was there when he felt trapped by you, and I will be there when he finally cuts himself free." Ava's fingers dug into her dress as she fought the urge to collapse into the nearest chair. She had sensed Ethan drifting away, but hearing Harper say it so clearly made her ribs feel too tight. Tears rose again, but she refused to let them fall. "Stop," Ava whispered. "Just stop." Harper's voice softened, but her cruelty did not. "You think I pushed you because I lost control. No, I pushed you because you needed to understand." She leaned in, her perfume almost suffocating. "You will not win. He does not want the burden anymore." Ava's vision blurred for a moment. The room felt too small, too bright, too sharp. She reached for the metal shelving to steady herself. "If something happens to my baby because of you," Harper rolled her eyes. "Nothing will happen. Pregnant women fall all the time." She flicked a piece of broken glass stuck to the hem of Ava's dress. "Besides, you should have watched where you were going." Ava's breath caught. "You pushed me." "Mon." "And you fell," Harper said simply. "Maybe you should work on your balance." A sound escaped Ava, somewhere between disbelief and pain. She held her belly tighter, feeling the faintest quiver inside. She whispered again to her child, "Stay with me, please." Harper sighed dramatically. "Look at you, holding your stomach like a shield. You think that makes you strong. It makes you pathetic." Ava looked up sharply, anger flaring in her chest. It surprised her. It gave her a sliver of courage she had forgotten she possessed. "You don't get to talk about my child." Harper raised a brow. "Or what?" Ava took a slow breath, steadying her trembling voice. "Or I'll walk out of this room right now, and you won't get another word from me." Harper studied her for a moment, then smirked. "Walk out. But remember this. You are alone. Ethan will not defend you. He will not choose you. And the sooner you accept that, the better." "Oh!" Ava felt the words strike deep, but she held her ground. She pushed off the shelving and took one careful step toward the door. Harper stepped aside but kept her eyes locked on Ava's face. "Run along. Clean yourself up. Try to look less broken when you see him." Ava felt her stomach twist. She moved past Harper, gripping the door handle. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Outside, the hallway felt colder than before, the sterile lights humming faintly above her. She stepped out, breathing shakily, fighting the heaviness pressing on her chest. She walked a few steps before pausing. Her body ached. Her belly tightened. The humiliation clung to her like a stain she could not wash away. She wanted to collapse, but she refused to. Not here, not in front of Harper. Behind her, Harper's voice drifted out casually. "Good luck, Ava. You're going to need it." Ava closed her eyes for a moment, swallowing the hurt. She placed both hands gently over her belly, whispering again to the only soul who depended on her. "I'm okay. We're okay." She forced her feet to move. One slow step at a time, she continued down the hallway, her breath uneven, her heart wounded, her mind spinning in a storm of fear and confusion. The polished floor reflected her shaky silhouette as she moved toward the brighter intersection of the corridor. Her legs felt heavier with each step, but she kept going. She had to. She could not fall apart until she reached a place where the walls would not echo the sound of her breaking. Just before she reached the end of the hallway, she heard a door further ahead click open, followed by the familiar cadence of footsteps she knew all too well. A cold shiver slid up her spine. Someone was coming, someone she could not avoid. And with that single sound, the hallway tightened around her, signaling the moment she dreaded most. Ava lifted her head, bracing herself. A cold tremor slid down Ava's spine as she stood in the narrow hallway, her hand pressed against the wall for balance. The footsteps grew clearer, echoing softly over the smooth floor. Each step seemed to tighten the air around her. She knew that rhythm. She had lived beside it for years. She had once found comfort in its sound. Now it made her pulse twist painfully inside her chest. She steadied her breath and lifted her chin, trying to hold herself together. A cold tremor slid down Ava's spine as she stood in the narrow hallway, her hand pressed against the wall for balance. The footsteps grew clearer, echoing softly over the smooth floor. Each step seemed to tighten the air around her. She knew that rhythm. She had lived beside it for years. She had once found comfort in its sound. Now it made her pulse twist painfully inside her chest. She steadied her breath and lifted her chin, trying to hold herself together. The deep red wine streaked across the pale blue fabric, almost looked like blood. His jaw tightened, not in fear or guilt, but in irritation. "Ava," he said. Just her name. Flat. Empty. She swallowed hard. "Ethan, I was looking for you." "I can see that," he replied, glancing at her damp hem as if she were a nuisance someone had spilled on a carpet. "What happened to you?" Ava opened her mouth, then hesitated. She wanted to say the truth. She wanted to tell him Harper had pushed her without warning. She wanted him to show even a flicker of concern for their child. But the memory of Harper's smirk, her words, her confidence, all made Ava pause. Would he even care? She placed her hand over her belly. "There was an incident in the tasting hall. Someone pushed me. I fell against the counter." Ethan's eyes narrowed, not with shock but annoyance. "You caused a scene." The words cut through her like a blade. Ethan Lancaster appeared at the end of the hallway. He walked with the same confident stride he used in every boardroom and public event, but there was no warmth in his eyes. His black suit jacket was unbuttoned, revealing a crisp white shirt underneath. His tie was loosened, as if he had been drinking or growing impatient for hours. His expression held no sign of worry, no hint of concern that his pregnant wife had just been shoved to the floor. His gaze fell on her stained dress first. "I didn't trip. She did it on purpose." Ethan exhaled sharply, as if bored by the explanation. "You always exaggerate. If something happened, you probably misunderstood it. You tend to do that." Ava felt her knees weaken. For a moment she thought she might collapse again, but she caught herself against the wall. "You're not even going to ask if the baby is okay," she said in a trembling voice. He did not answer. Instead, Ethan reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. He pulled out a slim stack of papers, neatly clipped together. He held them out toward her. Ava stared at them, her chest tightening. "What is that?" "Divorce papers," Ethan replied calmly, as though discussing a routine business contract. "It is time we stop pretending this marriage still works." The hallway went silent around them. The faint hum of the air conditioner grew louder in her ears. Ava did not reach for the papers. Her fingers refused to move. "Divorce," she repeated softly, barely breathing the word. "Yes, it is better for both of us," Ethan said. "I have already spoken with my attorney. All you need to do is sign." Ava felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. Her mind throbbed with disbelief. "You sent me a message. You told me to bring the insurance papers. You said we needed to fix something. You said it was important." "It is," Ethan replied. "I needed you here so you could sign these in a timely manner. If I had told you in advance, You would have delayed it with emotion. Emotion, as if she were some fragile inconvenience. Ava felt heat rise behind her eyes. "Ethan, I am carrying your child." He finally looked at her stomach, but his expression did not change. "I know, and I will provide financially, but I will not be trapped in a life that does not make sense anymore." Her voice cracked. "Trapped? Is that what you think I am?" He shrugged. "I think we both made mistakes, and it is time to move forward." A soft sound echoed from behind Ethan. Harper appeared at the far end of the hallway, leaning casually against the wall. She pretended to look surprised to see them, but the smug tilt of her lips betrayed her. She folded her arms and watched. Ava felt her stomach twist. Her breath turned shallow again. The baby shifted under her hand. Sensing the tension, she whispered, "So this is why she pushed me." Ethan did not deny it. He did not defend Harper. He did not ask what happened. He simply said, "I will not stand in a hallway, arguing. Sign the papers, Ava. We can handle the rest through our attorneys." Her vision blurred as tears finally escaped. She brushed them away with shaking fingers. "How can you do this to me? To us?" "You will be fine," Ethan said. His tone stayed cold. "You always land on your feet." Ava almost laughed. The sound that escaped her was not humor, but disbelief. "I almost fell on my stomach today. I am not fine." "Then," he shifted impatiently, "take the papers." She did not move. For a long moment they stood there in aching silence. Only the faint hum of lights filled the space between them. Then Ethan placed the papers on a small side table beside the hallway. "Sign them when you come to your senses. I will not ask again." He turned to walk away. Ava pressed her hand over her mouth, trying to hold back a cry. She felt the crushing weight of betrayal settle deep in her chest. The man she thought would protect her had just walked past her without a backward glance. Harper lingered a moment longer, giving Ava a slow, triumphant smile before following Ethan. Their footsteps faded until the hallway felt painfully empty. Ava stayed still, her hand trembling over her stomach, her heart cracking open in the silence they left behind. The papers sat on the table, waiting like a cruel reminder of everything that had collapsed in a single evening. She took a shaky breath. Something inside her shifted. Not strength, not yet, but a spark, a refusal to disappear. As her pulse steadied, she lifted her head. Far down the corridor, a new sound stirred. Not footsteps, not voices. A door creaked open somewhere beyond her view. Ava wiped her tears and forced herself to turn toward it, unaware that this next moment would alter the path of everything she thought she knew. Ava wiped the last tear from her cheek as she forced herself to turn toward the sound that had drifted from the far end of the hallway. The soft creak of a door opening echoed gently, too calm to match the storm that had torn through her minutes ago. Her pulse steadied only slightly, but her breathing remained shallow. She braced herself against the wall as the door at the distant corner slowly widened, letting a slice of warm, amber light spill into the stark corridor. A tall figure stepped through. He walked with unhurried certainty, as if the entire building belonged to him, or as if no chaos in the world could make him rush. He was dressed in clean, simple black jacket, black shirt, black jeans, nothing flashy, nothing loud. Yet his presence shifted the air the moment he appeared, pulling attention toward him without effort. A tall figure stepped through. He walked with unhurried certainty, as if the entire building belonged to him, or as if no chaos in the world could make him rush. He was dressed in clean, simple black jacket, black shirt, black jeans, nothing flashy, nothing loud. Yet his presence shifted the air the moment he appeared, pulling attention toward him without effort. He approached until only a few feet separated them. "Ava," he said. Her breath hitched. The voice was deep, steady, unmistakably controlled. It reached through the chaos in her chest and anchored her to the floor. She finally managed, "Daniel?" He nodded once. Ava pressed her hand to her heart as realization settled in. Daniel Reeves, her mother's cousin, practically an uncle to her. He had disappeared from family gatherings years ago, retreating into a quieter life after his career as a federal investigator had taken a toll on him. She had not seen him in almost 7 years. "What? What are you doing here?" she whispered. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Daniel studied her carefully. His eyes moved from her shaken posture to the stains on her dress, then to her trembling hands gripping her belly. His jaw tightened. "I was nearby," he said quietly. "Close enough to see you needed someone. Ava's lips parted, but before she could respond, another pair of footsteps echoed from behind. Ethan returned around the corner with Harper close behind him. Harper's lips pulled into a cold smirk the moment she saw Ava still standing. Ethan, however, stopped mid-stride. His expression shifted when he noticed Daniel blocking the narrow hallway. Ethan's tone sharpened instantly. "Who is this?" Daniel did not look at Ethan. He kept his eyes on Ava. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head but instinctively folded her arm tighter over her stomach. I don't know. I think the baby is okay, but she pushed me. Hard." Daniel finally turned toward Ethan. The shift in his posture was subtle but unmistakable. Shoulders squared, chin lifted, eyes flat and unreadable. Ethan's confidence wavered for the first time that night. Daniel spoke calmly. "Is that true?" Ethan scoffed. "This is none of your business. Whoever you think you are, you should stay out of our marriage." "That is not how you answer the question," Daniel replied. The temperature in the hallway felt like it dropped. Harper stepped forward defensively. "She fell. It was her fault. Ava makes everything dramatic. I barely touched her." Daniel's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Barely touched?" Ava swallowed hard, her throat burning. She saw the way Daniel's eyes narrowed. He understood. He saw through Harper immediately. Ethan stepped closer, reclaiming courage. "Again, this is private. You need to step aside." Daniel did not move. "No, I don't," Harper scoffed. "Who do you think you are?" Daniel held her stare with the calm, unshakable patience of someone who had questioned far more dangerous people than her. Someone who has known Ava her whole life. Someone who cares if she and her child leave this place safely. "Mo." Harper opened her mouth, then closed it, unsure why her voice suddenly refused to form words. Daniel turned back to Ava. His tone softened. "You do not have to stay here." Ava felt an unexpected wave of emotion rise in her chest. For the first time that night, she did not feel like she was standing alone in a burning room. Ethan's voice flared. "Ava stays until she signs those papers." Daniel stepped slightly to position himself between Ethan and Ava. "She is going with me." "No. You cannot just decide that," Ethan snapped. Daniel finally faced him fully. "Watch me." The hallway seemed to echo with the quiet force of those words. Ethan recoiled half a step before catching himself. Harper touched his arm, whispering something under her breath, but her eyes stayed locked on Daniel with a mixture of fear and irritation. Ava pressed her lips together, overwhelmed by everything unfolding around her. She had spent months shrinking into silence, hoping her marriage would recover, hoping Ethan would remember the man she once loved. But now she saw it clearly, the indifference, the cruelty, the alliance with Harper. None of it had been her imagination. Daniel extended a hand. "Ava, come with me." Her breath trembled. She hesitated only a second before placing her hand in his. His grip was steady, grounding, protective. He guided her gently forward. Ethan lunged a step closer. "Ava, do not walk away. You still have responsibilities." Daniel stopped and turned his head slightly. "She owes you nothing tonight." Harper moved beside Ethan, her voice rising. "You are making a mistake, Ava." Ava paused, turning enough to see the contempt on Harper's face. The woman who had shoved her, mocked her, tried to break her spirit. With a steadier voice than she expected, Ava said, "I already made one mistake, staying." Harper's smile cracked. Daniel guided Ava down the hall. Step by step, she followed him, her hand still protecting her belly, her heart thudding with a mixture of fear and the faintest spark of something she had not felt in months. Relief. They turned the corner. The hallway behind them fell silent. But just as they reached the door leading toward the outer lounge, a sudden gust of colder air swept through the corridor, carrying the scent of oak barrels and the distant chatter of guests. Daniel paused for a moment, assessing the path ahead. Ava drew in a breath, steadying herself, unaware that the decision she had just made would pull her deeper into a truth far larger than her marriage. And with one final step forward, the heavy door swung open, ushering them both into the next chapter waiting beyond the threshold. Daniel guided Ava through a service door near the side corridor, his hand steady around her arm as if he feared she might collapse. The vineyard's small medical room sat tucked behind the main tasting hall, hidden from guests who preferred glamour over the sight of cold metal counters and emergency supplies. The moment he opened the door, a sterile scent of alcohol wipes, and stored linens filled the air. Daniel guided Ava through a service door near the side corridor, his hand steady around her arm as if he feared she might collapse. The vineyard's small medical room sat tucked behind the main tasting hall, hidden from guests who preferred glamour over the sight of cold metal counters and emergency supplies. The moment he opened the door, a sterile scent of alcohol wipes and stored linens filled the air. "Oh!" Ava lifted the hem of her dress slightly and exhaled when she saw that the stains were only wine, no red that mattered. "The baby moved earlier," she whispered. "I think that is good." "It is, but do not assume everything is fine just because you feel movement. You need to calm down." Daniel crouched in front of her. "Start from the beginning. Tell me exactly what happened." Ava brushed hair from her face with trembling fingers. "Harper walked up to me like she wanted to talk. She acted friendly at first. Then she pushed me hard. I fell against the counter. I hit my side." Her voice faltered. "I could have landed on my stomach." Daniel listened without interrupting. His face remained unreadable, but she saw the clench in his jaw. "And Ethan," she continued. "When he came, he did not care. He blamed me. He brought divorce papers. He said I caused a scene." Her voice shook again, and she pressed her hand against her mouth before tears could fall. Daniel rose to his feet and walked a slow, measured circle around the small room. His breathing grew heavier in a way that suggested anger simmering beneath control. When he finally faced her again, his eyes had turned colder. "Harper pushed you in a room full of witnesses," he said, "and Ethan brought divorce papers. On the same night." He crossed his arms. "That is not coincidence." Ava blinked. "What do you mean?" Daniel stepped toward the door, cracked it open, and glanced into the hallway. When he returned, his voice dropped lower, more calculated. "People do ugly things when money is involved, and Ethan would not make a move like this unless he believed it would benefit him." Ava stared at him. "You think he planned it?" "I think something is off." Daniel picked up a folded towel from the counter, handing it to her so she could wipe her face. "There is timing, behavior. The fact that Harper felt bold enough to touch you tells me she thought she had protection. People do not escalate unless they believe someone is backing them." Ava's stomach twisted. "But why? What would Ethan gain?" Daniel tilted his head, sorting possibilities like a man trained to follow patterns. "Power, control, assets. You are carrying his child. That gives you leverage. In a bad marriage, leverage becomes a threat." Ava closed her eyes, overwhelmed. She had suspected Ethan of drifting away, of being unfaithful, but she had never imagined him capable of something calculated, something cruel. Daniel moved toward the small medical cabinet on the wall. He scanned it, not looking for supplies but for something else. His fingers brushed the latch, and he opened it. Behind the bandages and disinfectant bottles, a small security camera had been fixed into the corner with a discreet black casing. Ava's breath caught. "There is a camera in here. In most medical rooms," Daniel said. "Staff accountability, guest safety." He pointed toward it. "But look closely. The light is off." Ava leaned forward. "What does that mean?" Daniel stepped onto a chair to look at the device more carefully. He clicked the side panel. Nothing. No response. No power. "It means someone shut it down," he said. A chill crawled up Ava's arms. "Before I came in here, before the tasting event even started," Daniel replied. "Security cameras do not go off on their own, especially not in a vineyard that charges $800 for a reservation." He stepped down, the chair squeaking beneath his weight. "I want to check the hallway cameras too." He walked toward the door and opened it enough to scan the ceiling of the corridor. Ava watched his face shift again, tightening with suspicion. "The hallway camera is dark," he said. Ava's stomach dropped. "Both of them? Are you sure?" "Yes." He closed the door and leaned against it, thinking, whoever did this wanted no footage. Someone took the time to turn off multiple feeds in areas where you would walk. Ava pressed her hand to her chest. "Ethan, he told me to come here. He told me to bring documents. He told me the location." Daniel gave a slow nod. "Then he also knew where you would be standing, and he knew Harper would be there." Ava's pulse throbbed painfully as pieces she had ignored for months began falling into a clearer shape. Ethan's distance, his controlling tone, his sudden secrecy. Harper's presence. Now this. Daniel, she whispered. What do I do? He pulled his phone from his pocket but did not turn it on immediately. He stared at the blank screen for a long moment, thinking. Ava had seen her parents talk about Daniel with a mix of gratitude and sadness. Security cameras do not go off on their own, especially not in a vineyard that charges $800 for a reservation. He stepped down, the chair squeaking beneath his weight. I want to check the hallway cameras too. He walked toward the door and opened it enough to scan the ceiling of the corridor. Ava watched his face shift again, tightening with suspicion. The hallway camera is dark, he said. Ava's stomach dropped. Both of them. Are you sure? Yes. No. She nodded, wiping her face again. Okay. Daniel finally unlocked his phone. His fingers moved with precision, scrolling through contacts until he reached someone he clearly trusted. He hesitated only a moment before tapping the call button. Ava watched him, her heart pounding. Who are you calling? A colleague, Daniel said quietly. Someone who still owes me a favor. Someone who knows how to access things that do not want to be found. Aldi. Ava felt a mixture of fear and relief settle into her chest. Daniel lifted the phone to his ear. It is me, he said when the line connected. I need a trace on a set of disabled cameras and a digital sweep on 2 people. Yes, tonight. He listened for a few seconds, then nodded. Good, send me everything. He ended the call and turned back to Ava. You are not crazy, he said softly. And you are not wrong. Something bigger is happening here. No, she nodded, wiping her face again. Okay. Daniel finally unlocked his phone. His fingers moved with precision, scrolling through contacts until he reached someone he clearly trusted. He hesitated only a moment before tapping the call button. Ava watched him, her heart pounding. Who are you calling? A colleague, Daniel said quietly. Someone who still owes me a favor. Someone who knows how to access things that do not want to be found. Aldi. Ava felt a mixture of fear and relief settle into her chest. Daniel lifted the phone to his ear. It is me, he said when the line connected. I need a trace on a set of disabled cameras and a digital sweep on 2 people. Yes, tonight. He listened for a few seconds, then nodded. Good, send me everything. He ended the call and turned back to Ava. You are not crazy, he said softly. And you are not wrong. Something bigger is happening here. The walls of the small medical room vibrated with distant noise. At first it sounded like nothing more than a crowd shifting direction. Then the voices grew louder, sharper, tinged with alarm. Daniel stiffened. Ava's fingers tightened around the edge of the cot as she looked toward the door. What is happening out there? She whispered. Daniel lifted a hand gently. Stay here, I will check. Before she could protest, he slipped into the hallway. Ava listened to the faint click of the door closing behind him, then the buzz of the corridor. Her stomach tightened. Every instinct inside her told her that whatever was unfolding beyond those walls was connected to her, to Harper, to Ethan, to everything waiting to unravel. She let out a shaky breath and pressed her hand to her belly. You are okay, she whispered, more to steady herself than anything else. The baby moved softly beneath her palm, and she closed her eyes to gather strength. Moments later, the door opened again. Daniel stepped inside with a look that told her the situation had grown worse. There is a commotion in the tasting hall, he said. Someone shared a video. People are talking. Ava blinked. A video. Yes, someone caught Harper pushing you. It seems they recorded it on their phone. Ava's breath stopped for a moment. A wave of relief and dread collided inside her chest. Someone filmed it, she repeated, barely believing it. Daniel nodded. It is already spreading among the guests. People are arguing. A few seem angry at what they saw. Others are trying to defend Harper. Security is trying to calm them down. Ava covered her mouth. Her eyes shimmered with emotion she had held back all night. Someone actually helped. Not intentionally, Daniel replied with a steady voice. But they did. And that video changes everything. He paced the small room, hands behind his back, deep in thought. His mind moved in calculated patterns, as if fitting pieces of a puzzle that had finally begun to make sense. Daniel, Ava said softly. What now? We wait for my colleague to send information about the cameras, he said. But the video means we have leverage. It shows motive. It shows aggression. It shows Harper is lying. He looked at her. And once something hits a crowd, it rarely dies quietly. Someone will leak it. Ava blinked slowly. So the truth might come out. No. Part of it, Daniel said. He stopped pacing. But we need the rest. Before Ava could ask what he meant, his phone vibrated. He grabbed it quickly, scanned the message, and his expression sharpened. That was fast, he murmured. He typed a response with swift, practiced movements, then locked the screen. The cameras were intentionally shut down 30 minutes before you arrived. That is confirmed. Ava felt her blood run cold. So it was planned. Yes, Daniel said. And my colleague traced the command source. It was made using a private staff access code. Her voice trembled. Whose code? He looked at her closely. Ethan's. Ava pressed a hand to her lips. Tears welled but did not fall. Her chest tightened until she struggled to pull air in. The betrayal that had shattered her earlier now took shape with terrifying clarity. It was not just emotional abandonment, it was not just an affair, it was intentional harm. Someone she trusted had created a situation where she could have lost her child. Daniel stepped closer. Ava, breathe. She inhaled slowly. Her throat burned with the weight of truth. He wanted this, she whispered. He wanted something bad to happen. Not necessarily, Daniel said carefully. But he wanted control. And disabling cameras means he thought ahead. It means he knew Harper might confront you. It means he wanted no record of the confrontation. That alone is serious. Ollie. Ava closed her eyes and let a tear slip down her cheek. I feel sick. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You are safe right now. That is what matters. She nodded, though the knots in her stomach remained tight. Suddenly, voices echoed again from the tasting hall. Louder this time. Aggressive. A woman's angry shout pierced through the noise. Daniel moved toward the door instinctively. Stay here, he said. This might get worse before it gets better. But before he could step out, the medical room door swung open. A staff member entered, breathless and visibly shaken. She was a young woman in a vineyard uniform, with her hair tied back tightly, holding a phone in her hand. Sir, ma'am, I am sorry to interrupt, she said quickly, looking between them. You need to know, the video of what happened is already on social media. Ava froze. Already. The staff member nodded. Someone posted it a few minutes ago. It is spreading fast. People are messaging their friends outside. I heard 2 guests trying to call reporters. Daniel processed this with a calm expression, though Ava saw the tension in his jaw. Thank you, he said. That is helpful. The staff member hesitated. Her eyes softened when she looked at Ava. I saw what happened, she whispered. I am so sorry. Ava swallowed and managed a quiet, thank you. The staff member stepped back and shut the door behind her. Ava turned to Daniel with uncertainty. Is this bad or good? Daniel considered the question carefully. It is both. Good because it gives us evidence. Bad because Ethan and Harper will move faster now that the story is spreading. Ava drew a shaky breath. They will try to spin it. They always do. Yes, Daniel agreed. And we need to stay ahead. He walked to the small metal table beside the cot and picked up the divorce papers Ethan had forced into her hands earlier. He studied them for a moment, then set them down again. Ethan pushed too hard tonight, he said. Too fast, too aggressively. That tells me he is hiding something. Maybe financial, maybe personal, but something that makes him desperate. Ava stared at the dull shine of the papers. I trusted him. For years, and he trusted Harper enough to let her hurt me. Daniel's voice softened. Some people lose their compass long before anyone notices. Ava brushed a tear from her cheek. I kept thinking it was my fault, that I was not enough, that I wasn't what he wanted. Daniel shook his head. This is not about not being enough. This is about him becoming less. The words settled over her with surprising clarity. She felt her breath deepen. Her shoulders loosened slightly. For the first time that night, she did not feel completely powerless. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Another message. He checked it and exhaled sharply. What is it? Ava asked. Ava, he said slowly. My colleague also found something else. Something about Harper. Fear tightened her throat. What? He hesitated. She left a digital trail, and one of her messages suggests she and Ethan coordinated tonight. Ava's chest constricted. Coordinated how? That part is still being confirmed, Daniel said. But it is enough to know that what happened to you was not spontaneous. Ava shut her eyes. The walls felt too close again. She pressed both hands against her belly, grounding herself in the only truth she could trust. Daniel stepped beside her. "You need to stay strong now. The public side of this is about to explode, and they will try to twist the narrative." Ava opened her eyes slowly. "Then what do we do?" Daniel looked toward the hallway, where the noise from the tasting hall continued to swell. "We prepare," he said, "and we let the truth gain momentum." Before Ava could respond, a sharp knock struck the door. Voices grew louder outside. Something urgent, something shifting again. Daniel moved toward the door and pressed his palm against it. Whatever waited on the other side was the next turn in a night that had spiraled far beyond anything Ava could have imagined. And the pressure building in the hallway told them both that the battle had only begun. The knock on the medical room door faded into the distance as Daniel handled the rising chaos outside, leaving Ava in a quiet that felt strangely heavy. When the noise settled and the immediate danger passed, he returned to her with a plan. A real plan, not wishful thinking, not fear, a direction, something she had not felt in months. They left Thornhill Vineyard through a back exit to avoid the crowd. The night air outside was cool and gentle, brushing against Ava's skin in a way that made her realize how tense she had been inside. Daniel helped her into his truck, settling her carefully into the passenger seat, making sure her seatbelt did not press too tightly across her stomach. During the drive, she stared out the window, watching the vineyard lights blur into soft yellow streaks. Her hands rested protectively on her belly. The baby moved occasionally, reminding her she was not alone, even if she still felt hollow in places she had not yet learned how to mend. Daniel drove steadily, saying little, but his presence filled the silence with a grounded certainty. When they reached the small, quiet motel on the edge of town, he parked beneath a dim lamp and turned to her. "You will stay here tonight," he said. "It is safe, and no one will think to look for you here." Ava nodded slowly. "What about Ethan?" "He will realize I left." Daniel met her gaze. "He has bigger problems now. That video is spreading faster than he expected. He will focus on putting out fires, not on you." Ava exhaled shakily. "I still cannot believe someone filmed it." "It was luck," Daniel said, "but we are going to turn that luck into something stronger." He walked her to her room, checked the locks, and examined the windows the way only someone with investigative training would. Once satisfied, he pulled a chair to sit across from her as she settled onto the edge of the bed. "Now," he said calmly, "it is time to make your statement." Ava swallowed. "My statement?" "Yes, your story, your truth. We need your full account before anyone tries to twist it. The more details, the better. It gives us a foundation to work from." He opened a small notebook he carried in his jacket. His pen clicked softly. The sound felt heavier than it should. Ava stared at the blank page. For a moment, she froze. The events of the night rushed through her mind in flashes. Harper's shove, the shattering glass, the humiliation, Ethan's coldness, the divorce papers, the cameras that had been turned off, and the crushing realization that she had been living inside a lie. Her throat tightened. "I do not know where to start." "Start with when you arrived at the vineyard," Daniel said gently. "I will help you through the rest." Ava pulled in a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and began to speak. As the story poured out, Daniel listened without interrupting. His pen moved with steady precision. Occasionally, he asked a short question to clarify a timeline or detail. Ava realized how much she remembered, how much she had silently endured, how many small signs she had ignored because she had wanted so badly to believe her marriage could be repaired. When she finished recounting everything from the moment she received Ethan's message to the instant Daniel had appeared in the hallway, she felt drained. But she also felt lighter, as if speaking the truth aloud had loosened something wrapped too tightly around her chest. Daniel placed the notebook on the table beside him. "Good. This helps." Ava whispered, "It hurts." "I know," he said softly, "but hurt is not the same as helpless." "You will." She looked down at her stomach, feeling a gentle roll beneath her palm. For a moment, she forgot everything except the tiny life inside her. She pressed both hands gently around the curve of her belly and closed her eyes. A soft whisper left her lips. "We are going to be okay, little one." The baby moved again, as if responding. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but these were not the same tears she had shed earlier. They felt different, warmer, braver. Daniel stood and walked to the window, peeking through the curtain as if ensuring no one had followed them. When he returned, he took the chair again and leaned forward. "You need a lawyer," he said. "A real one. Someone who is not afraid to confront Ethan and whatever mess he created." Ava nodded. "Do you know someone?" "I do," Daniel replied. "Her name is Marissa Hale. Smart, sharp, and unforgiving when it comes to protecting victims." He paused. "And make no mistake, Ava, you are a victim, but you will not stay one." Ava felt a quiet strength rising inside her. "I want to meet her." "You will," Daniel said. "Tomorrow." He handed her a bottle of water. "For now, you need rest. But before you sleep, there is something you should hear." Ava's brows tightened. "What is it?" Daniel looked her directly in the eyes. "You were manipulated, controlled, gaslit. Ethan isolated you long before tonight. You need to understand that none of what happened is your fault. Not the distance, not the coldness, not his cruelty, not Harper's actions. People like them thrive when the person they are hurting blames themselves." Ava stared at him, her chest tightening. She had told herself variations of that truth before, but hearing it spoken so clearly brought a rush of emotion she could not contain. She covered her face with both hands. "I thought if I could just be better, if I could just keep the peace." "That is what they wanted," Daniel said. "Because a silent partner is easier to control." Ava lowered her hands slowly. She looked at her reflection in the darkened window. She barely recognized herself. But for the first time, she felt a shift, a spark, a small flame forming inside her that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with survival. "I do not want to be silent anymore," she said. Daniel nodded firmly. "Good." He gathered his notebook and stood. "I will be in the room next door if you need anything. Lock your door and rest." Ava rose slowly, walked to the door, and turned the lock with a soft click. She leaned her forehead against the wood for a moment, letting the sound settle in her chest like a tiny anchor. When she returned to the bed, she sat down with care, one hand cradling her stomach. The baby shifted again, calming her. "You and me," she whispered again. "We are going to get out of this." Outside, the hum of passing cars drifted through the thin motel walls. The world felt quieter now, but not empty, not hopeless. A new beginning had started, but as Ava lay back against the pillows, letting exhaustion pull at her limbs, she did not see the glow of her phone vibrating inside her purse. She did not hear the faint ping of notifications filling the lock screen. She did not know that the video of her fall had already reached hundreds of thousands of eyes, and as the night deepened, the spark of truth she and Daniel had ignited was already spreading across the country. The ballroom of the Fairmont Grand Hotel glowed with polished gold trim and sweeping chandeliers, each crystal strand shimmering beneath the soft white lighting. Rows of linen-covered tables stretched across the floor, decorated with tall vases of roses and deep red wine bottles positioned like trophies. Guests moved through the room in designer suits and shimmering gowns, carrying glasses filled with vintages older than many of the people holding them. The annual Thornhill charity auction was a place where reputations bloomed or died in a single evening. Ethan Lancaster arrived exactly on time. His suit was pressed perfectly, his tie, a dark navy that made him look every bit the rising executive he believed himself to be. Harper walked beside him, wearing an emerald dress that clung to her confidence like a second skin. She stayed close to his arm, speaking to him in soft, sweet tones that made several guests glance their way. People recognized him immediately. A handful of investors stepped forward, shaking his hand with forced enthusiasm. Harper beamed at each introduction, acting as if she belonged in the center of every camera flash. Ethan spoke smoothly, offering practice smiles, assuring everyone that the rumors swirling online were nothing but exaggerated nonsense. "The internet creates storms from the tiniest sparks," he said with a light laugh, brushing off concerns before they could grow roots. "Nothing happened. People love drama." Harper nodded in agreement, placing a hand on his arm as if supporting the truth he spun. "The woman who filmed it did not understand what she saw," she added. "Ava slips often. There was nothing malicious." Some guests exchanged glances, unsure whether to believe them. A few avoided eye contact altogether, unwilling to be associated with controversy until they knew how the story would unfold. The room held a subtle tension, faint yet noticeable. like the quiet before a string snaps under too much pressure. Harper sensed it too. She tightened her grip on Ethan's arm. "We should get in front of the cameras," she whispered. "If people see us together, looking calm, it will help." Ethan agreed, guiding her toward the stage where photographers had gathered to capture the arrivals. They posed beneath the glowing auction banner, smiling with overly bright composure. Each flash of light illuminated Harper's flawless expression and Ethan's calculated poise. But 3 floors above them, behind the heavy curtains of the technical balcony, Daniel Reeves watched the ballroom with narrowed eyes. He stood beside a technician who appeared increasingly nervous with each passing minute. Daniel had arrived with a plan, and enough evidence gathered to push the night toward a breaking point. His jaw tightened as he spotted Ethan and Harper near the stage, laughing as if the world belonged to them. Ava waited nearby, hidden behind one of the partitioned lounge sections. She wore a simple, elegant black dress, borrowed from Daniel's contact, chosen specifically so she would not draw unnecessary attention. Her hands rested protectively on her belly as she watched the crowd. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and certainty. Being here felt dangerous, but she trusted Daniel. He stepped toward her briefly. "Stay back until the moment is right," he said quietly. "This needs to unfold in the open." Ava nodded. "I understand." Daniel returned to the technician, who held a small remote in his trembling hand. "Are you sure about this?" the man asked. "Yes," Daniel replied. "Play it exactly when I say." The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as the host began welcoming the crowd to the annual charity event. Applause scattered across the room, polite and controlled. Ethan and Harper stepped closer to the front, standing in clear view of everyone. The host spoke warmly about the vineyard, the community, the importance of charitable giving, and the joy of celebrating luxury wine. But as he shifted toward the main announcement, Daniel gave a slight nod. "Now," he whispered. The technician pressed the button. Every screen in the ballroom blinked. The auction graphics faded. The Thornhill logo dissolved. And then the video began. The footage was shaky, clearly filmed from a phone. At first, some guests looked confused. But within seconds, the room fell silent. On screen, Ava appeared in the tasting hall, her blue dress glowing beneath the warm lighting. Then Harper stepped toward her, smiling with a cruelty that needed no translation. The shove played clearly. Glasses fell. Ava stumbled. Wine splashed across her stomach. The sharp gasp of guests in the background echoed perfectly in the ballroom, now watching it all unfold. A stunned quiet filled the space. No one moved. Ethan's face drained of color. Harper froze, her lips parted, eyes wide. Someone in the crowd covered their mouth. Another whispered, "My God." The shove replayed automatically on loop, the moment repeating like a damning heartbeat. Each replay tightened the grip of outrage around the room. People murmured, some angry, some disgusted. Others stared at Ethan and Harper with visible shock. Harper backed away from the screen, shaking her head. "Turn it off," she whispered. "Turn it off now." Ethan grabbed her arm. "Stay calm, we can explain." But the panic in his voice betrayed him. A man in the crowd shouted, "She is pregnant! You shoved a pregnant woman!" Another added, "This is assault." Harper stumbled back a step. Her confidence shattered in seconds. Ethan tried to regain control. "This video is misleading. Taken out of context. Ava fell, that is all." Daniel appeared at the front of the room then, stepping through a side entrance with purposeful steps. Ava followed behind him, her presence turning whispers into stunned silence. The sight of her, carrying herself with quiet dignity despite what she had endured, struck the crowd harder than the video itself. Ethan stared at her. "What are you doing here?" Ava said nothing. She simply looked at him with a steady, unwavering gaze. Before another word could be spoken, the ballroom doors swung open. Several men and women in dark suits stepped inside, badges held high. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," the lead agent announced. His voice boomed through the ballroom. "Ethan Lancaster, you are under arrest for financial fraud, obstruction of justice, and evidence tampering." Gasps erupted. Harper's knees gave out, and she collapsed against a chair. "This is a mistake!" she cried. "No, this cannot be happening. Can you?" Ethan paled as 2 agents seized his arms. "Wait, you do not understand. I can explain. This is not real." Daniel stepped closer, standing beside Ava, his voice steady and cold. "It is real, Ethan, and you brought it on yourself." Ethan turned toward Ava, his face twisted with shock. "You did this to me." Ava shook her head. "No, you did this to yourself." The agents began escorting Ethan out. Cameras from guests recorded every second. Voices rose through the ballroom in a mix of outrage, questions, and vindication. Harper reached for him, sobbing, "Ethan, say something." But Ethan did not look back. As the doors closed behind the agents, silence settled again. The tension felt electric, heavy with consequence. Ava gripped Daniel's arm for support. Her breath trembled, but her voice held steady when she said, "It is finally happening." Daniel nodded. "The truth always pushes through eventually." Ling. Before Ava could respond, a new wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. Reporters were already arriving at the entrance, rushing inside with raised cameras. The night was not finished. Something much bigger was beginning. Federal Courtroom 12B was colder than Ava expected. The air carried the familiar chill of large government buildings. A chill that clung to concrete, old carpet, and walls, lined with framed photographs of judges who had long retired or passed away. The fluorescent lighting overhead cast a pale brightness across the polished wooden railings and rows of fixed seats. Every detail felt distant and sterile, except for the weight in Ava's chest. Daniel stood beside her as she entered the room, guiding her toward the front row. Her black dress fit comfortably around her belly, now noticeably rounder than it had been the night of the vineyard incident. She held her hands gently over the curve, her fingers laced together to calm her nerves. Today mattered. Today the world would hear what had been done to her. The courtroom slowly filled. Local reporters claimed the left side of the seats, their cameras lowered until the judge allowed recording. Members of the public took the rest, murmuring quietly, many of them older, many with the solemn expressions of people who believed in the justice system and had lived long enough to see both its failures and triumphs. Ava felt their eyes on her, but not with judgment, with concern, with empathy, with something she had rarely felt in recent months. "Support," the bailiff announced. "All rise." Everyone stood as Judge Alden Carrington, a man in his early 70s with silver hair and sharp blue eyes, stepped to the bench. His presence commanded the room before he even spoke. He took his seat and nodded for everyone else to do the same. "Bring in the defendant," the judge said. A hush swept across the courtroom as Ethan was escorted inside, wearing a county-issue suit that failed to hide the exhaustion on his face. His once carefully styled hair now hung slightly unkempt. His wrists remained cuffed until he reached the defense table. Harper sat behind him with her own attorney, her hands trembling in her lap, mascara already smudged beneath her eyes. Ava inhaled slowly. Seeing Ethan like this felt surreal. Once he had been the man she trusted with everything. Now he was the man who had orchestrated her humiliation, who had endangered her child, who had tried to erase her voice. The clerk began reading the charges against him. "Ethan Michael Lancaster, you are charged with financial fraud, evidence tampering, conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice, and participation in an assault resulting in endangerment." Each charge echoed in the room like a hammer strike. Ethan stared straight ahead, his jaw working, muscles twitching with frustration or fear. It was hard to tell which. The prosecution began their presentation quickly. Assistant District Attorney Lena Morales approached the jury box, her paperwork neatly organized, her tone professional but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, "you will see that the events at Thornhill Vineyard were not isolated. You will hear testimony that the defendant conspired with an associate, Miss Plang, Harper Vale, to create a confrontation that would place Mrs. Ava Lancaster in harm's way. You will see evidence that security cameras were disabled with Mr. Lancaster's private code. You will see financial records showing he stood to gain significantly by removing his wife from the picture." Whispers rippled across the courtroom. Ava gripped Daniel's hand, steadying herself. The prosecution called the first witness, a vineyard employee who had seen Ava pushed. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. She identified Harper. She described Ava's pain. She described the shock that fell over the room. Then came the video. All screens in the courtroom flickered to life. The moment played in crystal clarity. Harper's shove, Ava's fall, the glasses crashing, the wine spreading across her stomach, the unmistakable sound of gasps. A collective inhale came from the jury box. Several jurors, all in their 60s or 70s, leaned forward in disbelief. One woman put a hand over her chest. Judge Carrington watched with a tightened jaw, his expression unreadable but heavy with disapproval. When the video ended, the room fell silent. The prosecution continued, presenting the financial records next. Emails between Ethan and Harper appeared on the monitors, hidden accounts, transfers, discussions about closing loose ends, and making the transition easier. Ava's stomach turned. Seeing the words in black and white felt like another betrayal layered over the first. Defense attorney Richard Hale stood, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor," he began, forcing a confident tone, "these messages have been taken out of context. Mr. Lancaster was dealing with multiple business issues. The prosecution is twisting his words." But the judge remained unsmiling. When it was time for Ava to testify, Daniel helped her rise. Her legs trembled at first, but her steps toward the witness stand felt steadier than she expected. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down. Her voice was quiet at first. "The night of the vineyard tasting, I believed I was meeting my husband to help with paperwork." She explained how Harper approached her, how the shove felt, how she feared for her child, how Ethan handed her divorce papers moments later. "I was scared," she admitted. "Not only for myself, but for my baby." Her voice broke slightly, but she did not stop. "I thought I had done something wrong. For months I believed that everything was my fault. Nothing happened. People love drama." Harper nodded in agreement, placing a hand on his arm as if supporting the truth he spun. "The woman who filmed it did not understand what she saw," she added. "Ava slips often. There was nothing malicious." Some guests exchanged glances, unsure whether to believe them. A few avoided eye contact altogether, unwilling to be associated with controversy until they knew how the story would unfold. When confronted with the recovered text that read, "Once she is out of the way, we can finally move forward," her face went pale. "I did not mean harm," Harper stammered. "I was pressured. Ethan told me to act." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "That is a lie." The bailiff stepped forward. "Sir, you will remain silent." Judge Carrington leaned forward, eyes hard. "Mr. Lancaster, you will control yourself." By the end of the day, the case was clear. The jury returned after only 3 hours of deliberation. We find the defendant, Ethan Michael Lancaster, guilty on all counts, and the associate, Harper Vale, guilty of coordinated assault and conspiracy. Ethan's face collapsed. Harper broke into sobs. Judge Carrington delivered the sentence with steady authority. "Ethan Lancaster, for the severity of your crimes, the court hereby sentences you to 35 years in federal prison," gasps Echoet. "Harper Vale, you are sentenced to 12 years for your role in the assault and cover-up." Ava pressed her hand against her chest, overwhelmed with emotion. Tears filled her eyes, but these were tears of release. Daniel touched her shoulder gently. "It is over," he said. Ava exhaled, shaky but relieved. But as the judge's gavel struck, the sound reverberated through the courtroom like a door closing and another slowly opening. Ava did not yet know what the next chapter of her life would look like, but it was waiting. 1 year later, the world looked different to Ava Lancaster. The sharp edges of the past had softened, fading into memory like distant storm clouds dissolving against a morning sky. She stood on the porch of a small cabin overlooking Lake Tahoe, the cool breeze brushing gently across her skin. The early light spread across the water like a silver ribbon, shimmering with quiet promise. Behind her, inside the cabin, the soft cooing of a baby filled the air. Ava smiled. The sound had become the heartbeat of her new life. She turned and stepped through the doorway, moving toward the wooden cradle near the window. Inside lay her son, Liam, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, his small hands curled near his cheeks. His gentle breaths created a rhythm that soothed her soul. She brushed her fingers lightly over his forehead, feeling the warmth of new life, of survival, of everything she had fought for. "You are growing so fast," she whispered. 1 year later, the world looked different to Ava Lancaster. The sharp edges of the past had softened, fading into memory like distant storm clouds dissolving against a morning sky. She stood on the porch of a small cabin overlooking Lake Tahoe, the cool breeze brushing gently across her skin. The early light spread across the water like a silver ribbon, shimmering with quiet promise. Behind her, inside the cabin, the soft cooing of a baby filled the air. Ava smiled. There had been nights of fear, mornings of exhaustion, and moments when the weight of memory threatened to crush her. But Liam had anchored her. Every breath he took reminded her why she had survived, why she had endured, why she had stood against a truth that sought to silence her. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She rose slowly, still holding Liam, and opened the door. Daniel stood outside, dressed in his usual dark jacket and jeans. His hair had grown slightly longer, and faint wrinkles sat deeper around his eyes, but his presence remained steady and grounding. He carried a small wooden toy in his hand. "Morning," he said with a soft smile. "Thought I'd drop by to check on you two." Ava stepped aside to let him in. "You always know the right time." Daniel set the toy on the table and walked toward Liam, who blinked up at him with bright curiosity. Daniel reached out and brushed a gentle finger over the baby's cheek. "He looks healthy," Daniel said. "Stronger than last month." "He is," Ava said, rocking Liam slightly. "He is thriving." Daniel nodded. "And so are you." Ava looked down at her son, then toward the window where sunlight spilled across the floor. "I am trying. Some days are easier than others." "That is how healing works," Daniel replied. "Not in straight lines, but you are moving forward, and that matters." Ava felt a warmth settle in her chest. Daniel had become more than family. He had become the person who anchored her in ways she never expected. He showed up without being asked. He fixed the loose boards on the porch. He helped with groceries. He checked on her without hovering. He gave her space when she needed it, and strength when she did not know how to find her own. Ava walked toward the small kitchen, motioning for him to take a seat. "Coffee!" "Always," Daniel said, settling into the chair near the window. She poured 2 cups, careful not to jostle Liam. When she returned, Daniel accepted his cup with a grateful nod. Steam rose into the air as they both watched the lake through the open curtains. "It is quiet here," Daniel remarked. Ava smiled. "That is why I chose it. For the quiet, for a fresh start." Daniel sipped his coffee. "You made the right choice." A few moments of comfortable silence passed before Ava spoke again. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't been there that night?" she asked. Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. "Sometimes. But I think what matters is that you found your strength. I may have stepped in, but you made the choices that saved you." Ava lowered her gaze. "I never thanked you properly." "You do not have to," Daniel replied. "You and Liam being safe is thanks enough." She felt her throat tighten with emotion. Liam shifted in her arms, pressing his face against her shoulder. She kissed the top of his head. "Before everything happened," Ava said softly, "I thought the world would end if I lost the life I had with Ethan. I thought I needed his approval, his attention, his love, or whatever version of it he offered." She looked at Daniel with clear eyes. "But I was wrong." Daniel nodded gently. "That is how control feels, like dependence." Ava exhaled. "Now I know better." They watched the sunlight continue rising over the lake. Birds began to stir in the distant trees, their calls echoing faintly across the water. Ava felt the world waking up slowly, beautifully, and she felt something inside her waking up too. After a while, Daniel stood. "I have to head into town for supplies. Need anything?" Ava shook her head. "We are good. Thank you, though." He paused near the door. "If you ever need help, anything at all, you call me." "I know," she said. "Thank you for being here." "You." Daniel gave a soft nod and stepped outside. The door closed gently behind him. Ava carried Liam back to the rocking chair and sat once more, letting the rhythm of the chair and the warmth of her son pull her into a moment of deep peace. The world outside shimmered with light, each wave across the lake catching the sun in a new pattern. She knew there would still be challenges. She knew raising a child alone would require strength she had not yet discovered. But she also knew she was not the same woman who had stumbled through Thornhill Vineyard, stained with wine and fear. She had survived betrayal. She had reclaimed her voice. She had brought her son safely into the world. And she had begun building a life shaped not by what she lost, but by what she found within herself. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, rushing against her cheek. She closed her eyes, letting it wash away the last shadows of the past. The lake glimmered. Liam breathed quietly against her shoulder. And in that gentle quiet, Ava felt something rise in her chest. Something warm, something whole. Hope, pure and steady. A new beginning, born from all the pain she had endured, now wrapped her in a peace she had once believed she would never feel again. And as the sun lifted fully above the horizon, spilling gold across the water, Ava whispered to her son, "We made it." The future waited, bright and open, ready for them both.